Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Rebecca Pickens. I'm a certified book coach and developmental editor, and I'm also host of Self-Editing Essentials. This is a group coaching program for writers who have finished or almost finished writing their novel or memoir and are ready to learn the art of self-editing. If you'd like to learn more about the services that I provide writers, you can check them out in the comments section below. All right, but today we are going to talk about all things related to dialogue. I love writing dialogue. I love reading dialogue. It's a really amazing tool that can accomplish all kinds of objectives when it's used properly. So let's talk first about the real role of dialogue. Dialogue is not simple conversation, small talk, or filler until you get to the next big thing. Dialogue is actually a tool we can use to illuminate character, to develop a character, to tell us everything we need to know about the people in your story. Dialogue is also a great way to heighten tension in a story, and it can serve as revelation in disguise. Let's look more closely at what I mean by this. So, dialogue can be used to reveal character. Dialogue isn't just what your characters are saying, it's about how they say it and when they say it and what they don't say as well. It's all these things. Let's look at an example from To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a quote from one of the main characters in the story, Atticus Finch. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around in it. So these words are a perfect way to show, not tell, who this character is. If you're familiar with this story, you know Atticus Finch is a highly moral, very empathetic person. Rather than the author simply telling us this, kind of hammering us over the head with these sorts of details, she lets us draw our own conclusion by giving us these words that he speaks. Dialogue should also advance your story. Dialogue must change the state of a scene emotionally, narratively, or relationally. The key is that when that dialogue began, something changed by the time it finished. This comes from Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke. You're not even a cop. That's not true. I have a contact at the Tribune who said that no one from the Rangers was assigned to investigate what happened to Michael. I called the Rangers office myself and was told Darren Matthews is currently on suspension. Not anymore, he said, feeling guilty gratitude for this woman whose loss had put his life back on course. I spoke to my lieutenant this morning, and I'm in this now. I'm investigating your husband's death. This is such a good use of dialogue as a literary element because it is accomplishing so many different things. Let's take a look. On the one hand, it is moving this story forward. We have a character who believed one thing, and by the end of this exchange, she's learned that what she believed was not accurate. We're seeing how this story is going to move forward now that Darren Matthews is back on the case and he is going to be re-engaging with his former life in which he worked as a detective. So in a very short amount of time, we've just had a major leap in the plot. We're going forward with both of these characters. And we're also given a chance to learn a little bit more about Darren Matthews. We get some nice interiority here, don't we? As he responds to the dialogue that's being spoken, right? That's so interesting because we usually think about the way that one character who is speaking is going to impact the character who is listening, how this exchange back and forth is going to impact them. But also, we can see from this example that dialogue impacts the person who's speaking it sometimes. And we see that here with Darren Matthews and his realization that he's feeling this guilty gratitude that he describes in this passage. Dialogue can also be used to express or to avoid subtext. And subtext is those feelings and emotions that are happening beneath the surface of your dialogue. Real people very rarely say what they actually mean, right? We dodge and we stumble. Sometimes we speak in metaphor, but we often do not speak to our point directly. And if we do, that's a certain kind of person, that's a certain kind of character, and you would use dialogue to show that. But the reality is, more times than not, our language tends to be indirect. And that gap between what is said and what is meant is oftentimes the precise place where your real story is taking place. Here's an excellent example from Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. These are the words spoken by Daisy. "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." So on the surface, we're talking shirts. It's not very compelling, but of course, the shirts are a metaphor for so much more. Daisy is beginning to regret some choices she has made, and she is contemplating materialism and luxury and this really kind of easy life she has foregone, and she's feeling some regret about it, which of course she's putting all onto these shirts, right? So often in real life and in novels and memoir, a character will be shown putting undue attention on a specific small detail in an attempt to express an emotion that's difficult to talk about in more specific, more precise terms. So this is a fabulous way to show, to use dialogue to show what's sort of eating at your character beneath the surface. So we've all read dialogue, maybe we've even written some dialogue that has fallen flat. And it can sometimes be difficult to know what isn't working. We just intuitively know it's not. We're going to look now at some of the reasons that dialogue can fail. The first one is what we call as you know exposition. And this, as a reader, can be very annoying to stumble upon. As you know, exposition reveals what the reader needs to know, what the writer wants to make sure their reader knows, but it doesn't replicate the way that people really speak. And so it can feel very forced, it can feel very hokey. Let me give you an example. This is just a fictitious example, not from a real book. "As you know, Sarah, our father died in the explosion 3 years ago." "Yes, John. And ever since," and you could even put an "as you know" here, "I've been training to become a secret agent." So you can see here, this is just boom, boom, boom on the head with the facts that we need you to know. There's no nuance, there's no building up, there's no dodging the facts. This is just all very direct, hit you over the head delivery. And it's very rare that people speak this way. And so when it turns up in a book, it can be a little bit frustrating to the reader. When dialogue fails, sometimes it's because we're seeing the same voice for everyone. So as you're writing your dialogue or as you're editing it, ask yourself if you remove the names, if you removed all those Jane said, John said tags, would your reader still know who is speaking? And the reason that this is so important is there's two reasons. One is because obviously you don't want to confuse your reader. You want them to be able to follow who is speaking. But secondly, if we think about dialogue as a great way to learn more about your character's personality and about their quirks and whatever it is that makes them come to life on the page, then we want their dialogue to be distinctive. We want to really use this moment to make the character sound the way the character would sound to others. So if everyone is sounding the same, that's probably not being accomplished. Perfect language is something we don't see very often in real life. People interrupt, people trail off and start thinking about other things. We repeat ourselves sometimes when we're feeling really emphatic. And one of the reasons I enjoy reading and writing dialogue is because it's a chance to break all those rules that we're told we shouldn't do when we're writing, right? Don't repeat yourself and be direct, and all that kind of stuff that we bring with us when we sit down to write. We can play with that quite a bit in dialogue because we are replicating not the way writers write, but the way that people speak. So here's an example from a really wonderful novel called Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones. I will kill him, my father said. I will kill him. What's his name? Marcus McCready, I said, and my father's face changed. I know his father, James said. The tax guy, Raleigh said. So the reason that this dialogue works so well is because it mirrors expertly the pacing that we see when we're having a conversation with another person in real life. The sentences are rather short. They go back and forth. We have incomplete sentences. We use contractions. There's even repetition here. I will kill him, my father said. I will kill him. It's that emphatic tone that he takes that feels really relatable. It's how we know that he's upset. He's repeating himself with the hopes that people just really understand where he's coming from, and that ramps up the emotional nature of this section, and we really start to empathize with what he's going through. We've got this incomplete sentence from Raleigh, the tax guy, right? That's exactly how we talk. We don't go in and speak in complete sentences when we're having back and forth this way. So, on a lot of different levels, Jones has done a very good job mirroring the way that people really speak. Now, before I go on, I will say you are still creating a work of art. And that means striking that balance between authentic conversation and artful dialogue. So while she does repeat herself twice here, she doesn't repeat herself three times. And maybe in real life we would, because obviously the stakes are really high in this scene. So there is some judgment that you need to use. It's how do you make authentic language and also preserve the artistry so that so it's not too real, if that makes sense. So there is that balancing act that dialogue needs to achieve. So another thing to be on the lookout for is too much talking. We all have characters who like to talk a lot, and dialogue is one way that we can show that character attribute. That's fine. But in general, you want to be really careful that your characters aren't speaking in long, lengthy paragraphs because that simply it doesn't mirror how people talk. If there are instances where they're going on and on and on for a long time, make sure that that is because the situation warrants it. They are talking about something so important that they can't stop to take a breath, and they are just pouring out what they feel or what they've seen or whatever it is that they are trying to relay to the listener in the scene. But you just want to be really conscious of not giving your characters too many monologues because that can start to just not feel very realistic. You can see here what Jones has done is added the phrase, and my father's face changed. What this extra information does is, for one thing, it breaks up that dialogue so that we have a chance to absorb it. It makes things more digestible. So we're feeling each line of dialogue and really taking it in. And then it also gives us a moment to see the father's face, to even further experience what he's experiencing. We're standing beside him because of this extra bit of information. So, putting action beats like this, walking your character across the room to get a glass of water as they speak, having them fiddle with an earring or a ring on their finger, these kinds of action beats in between your dialogue can be very helpful. They just ground us in a scene and they also help us see what's happening. So, as you sit down to write dialogue, I have a couple tips for you. The first one is before you begin, identify the purpose of the piece of dialogue you're about to construct. Why does it need to be there? If you know its purpose, you will have a much easier time making sure that it achieves all those goals. So really identifying, are you including dialogue primarily to move your plot forward, to reveal something about a character, to add some clever subtext? Be aware of that, and the dialogue will flow much more easily. Read your dialogue aloud. I cannot emphasize this enough. The best way to tell if your dialogue feels real, if it feels voicey, if it feels distinctive, is to actually hear it out loud. If you write in Word or in Scrivener, there are actually features, probably there are in other programs as well. These are just the two that I'm familiar with, so apologies for that. But if you use these platforms, there are features there where you can hear your story read to you. And that can be so helpful. It's this terrible, cringy robot voice reading your dialogue back at you. And this is actually really helpful because sometimes if you're reading your own work, you're such a good reader and you love the story so much that you're putting your own inflections and your lots of flair into the reading. And that can sometimes cover up flaws in the writing. But when you hear your writing read back to you in that kind of mechanical voice that we get from a bot, it's very helpful because you're really hearing the writing. You're not hearing someone's voice making the writing more sparkly. So I highly recommend using those features of your word processing program. And just be listening for natural flow. Does it mirror the way we talk to one another in real life? And then finally, make sure to go back. This would be a good thing to do during your revisions and tighten and clarify that writing, looking at all the details that you've put into it. Because sometimes you identify the purpose of your dialogue and you know exactly what information you want to convey to the reader, but it doesn't make it in there because maybe you're working really hard on um, capturing the style of speaking, the syntax of the sentences, or some other craft detail about the dialogue. And then the actual information you're trying to present gets lost in all of that. So when you're going through revisions, look back and make sure, did this piece of dialogue do what it was supposed to do? Did it understand the assignment? And if not, that's a great time to go tweak that and make it work. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you will play with dialogue this week. It's such a wonderful way to make your story come to life for readers. If this video was helpful, I would be so grateful if you would hit like. And if you'd like more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I will drop new videos every Tuesday about all things writing. We talk craft, publishing, editing. And if you have a question for me, drop it in the comments section and I will try to answer it right here. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next time.